Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked out of a meeting, a performance review, or even just a casual conversation with your manager and felt this strange, hollow feeling? Like someone just described a completely different person and called them you. You worked hard, you thought carefully, you showed up, and somehow they still didn't get it. Maybe your intentions were twisted. Maybe your strengths got labeled as weaknesses. Maybe you said something nuanced and it landed flat. And then came that familiar sting. Not quite anger, not quite sadness, something in between, something lonelier. If you felt that, you're not alone, and you're not broken. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most quietly painful experiences in professional life, the psychology of feeling deeply misunderstood at work. We're going to look at why it happens, what's actually going on in your brain and in your relationships, and what you can actually do about it. Not just to cope, but to genuinely change the dynamic. Because here's the thing most people get wrong. They think being misunderstood is a communication problem. Fix your messaging, speak up more, be clearer. Sure, sometimes that helps, but often it runs much deeper than that. Here's the reframe I want you to sit with. Being misunderstood at work isn't just about what you're saying. It's about the gap between your internal world, your motivations, your values, your way of processing things, and the model other people have built of you in their heads. Psychologists call this the empathy gap. Not the kind of empathy gap where someone doesn't care about you. The kind where even well-meaning people are working with an incomplete, distorted, or just plain wrong picture of who you are. And the painful irony? The more complex, nuanced, or sensitive you are as a person, the wider that gap tends to be. Let me take you inside the neuroscience for a moment. I promise it's worth it. When someone forms an impression of you, their brain isn't running a careful, objective analysis. It's doing what brains do best. Taking shortcuts. Your brain, and everyone else's, uses something called heuristic processing. It pattern matches, it fills in blanks, it takes a few data points and builds a whole story. So your colleague sees you go quiet in a brainstorm session, and their brain whispers, "Not a team player." Your manager notices you asking a lot of questions, and without even realizing it, their brain files that under lacks confidence. None of that is malicious. It's just how perception works. But here's what makes it sting so much more for some people. Research in personality psychology consistently shows that individuals high in traits like openness to experience, introversion, or emotional sensitivity, often called highly sensitive persons or HSPs, are systematically more likely to be misread in conventional workplace settings. Why? Because their internal experience is richer, more layered, and less immediately legible. What looks like hesitation might be deep processing. What looks like detachment might be overstimulation. What looks like disagreement might actually be the most careful, considered engagement in the room. The workplace wasn't designed for that. Most workplace cultures reward speed, visibility, and confident self-promotion. If that's not your natural mode, you start to feel invisible, or worse, misrepresented. And I want to pause here and just say, that hurts. It's not dramatic to say that chronic misunderstanding at work can erode your sense of self. Research on workplace belonging shows that when people feel persistently unseen or miscategorized, it doesn't just affect morale, it affects identity. You start to question your own read on situations. You second-guess your contributions. You shrink. That slow shrinking, that's the real cost. Not just the frustrating meeting, not just the unfair review, but the quiet erosion of your confidence over time. You deserve better than that, and more importantly, you can do something about it. The gap between how you experience yourself and how others perceive you is real, but it's not fixed. One of the most powerful things you can do is get deliberate about narrating your process, not just delivering your output. Instead of quietly doing excellent work and hoping someone notices the depth of it, start making your thinking visible. In practice, this might sound like, I've been sitting with this problem all week because I wanted to make sure I'd considered the second-order effects. Or, I went quiet in that meeting because I was genuinely trying to integrate what everyone said before I responded. You're not oversharing. You're closing the gap. You're giving people the context they need to understand the why behind the what. Now, this next one takes courage, but it's transformative. Find a trusted colleague or manager and ask directly, "I'd love to understand how you experience working with me. What impression do I give?" And then just listen. Don't defend, don't explain, just receive it. What you're doing is gathering data on the model others have built of you. Once you know what's in that model, accurate or not, you have the power to work with it. You might discover that someone perceives you as cold when you're actually just focused. That's useful. You can address that specifically, deliberately, without overhauling who you are. Every workplace has people who seem to get you instinctively. Protect those relationships fiercely. These people are more than friends. They're translators. They can vouch for your work, reframe your communication style to others, and give you honest, grounding feedback. In organizational psychology, this is sometimes called your work attachment figure, someone who helps regulate your sense of safety and belonging at work. If you don't have one yet, it's worth investing time in building that kind of relationship intentionally. A quick but important note. If you're someone with ADHD, autism, or high sensitivity, the experience of workplace misunderstanding can be more intense and more structurally embedded. In those cases, individual strategies help, but they're not always enough on their own. Sometimes the environment itself needs to change. Advocating for accommodations, finding neurodiversity affirming workplaces, or working with a therapist or coach familiar with these profiles can make an enormous difference. There's no shame in needing a different container, not just a different strategy. Here's something I want you to hold on to. Being misunderstood is not evidence that you are too much, too complicated, or not cut out for professional life. It is evidence that there is a gap, and gaps can be closed. The very qualities that make you hard to read quickly are often the qualities that produce your most meaningful work. The depth, the care, the refusal to oversimplify. Those aren't flaws to be sanded down. They're assets that need better framing. You don't need to become a different person. You need better tools for building bridges between your internal world and the world other people can see. So let's bring this home. Feeling misunderstood at work isn't a communication glitch. It's the result of a real perceptual gap, shaped by how brains form impressions, how workplace cultures reward certain kinds of visibility, and how complex people often get flattened into simple categories. The path forward isn't to shrink, it's to get strategic. Narrate your process, seek perception feedback, cultivate your translators. And if you need more support than that, seek it without apology. If this resonated with you, download the free guide linked in the description. 5 scripts for closing the misunderstanding gap at work. And make sure you watch the next video on why quiet people get overlooked and how to change that without losing yourself, because the two go hand in hand. You're not the problem. You're just not fully visible yet. Let's change that.